Hayden, what is up?
What's up? How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. I hope you're doing well as well. We were kind of talking a little bit before, but I'm super excited for this because I think that I always do research on my guests, and you have been in the fitness industry for so long, so consistently. Like
Thank
I
you.
was scrolling back on your Instagram and back on your Instagram and back on your Instagram and back on your Instagram, and like you've been doing this stuff for so like what has allowed you to be at such a high level in the fitness industry for so long?
Because I actually love it.
Yeah.
I actually love it. Yeah, even training. Training was never about a competition. I trained like an animal before I even knew what competing was. I've always been an athlete at heart. And so when high school sports ended and I got into college, I started really seriously weightlifting and I just fell in love with it. It started as an outlet. It started as, just a healthy outlet for myself. And then I started becoming really good at it and really proficient in it. And then I learned that you could shape your body to look a certain way. And I thought that was really cool because I remember like the first photo that I saw of a woman that she was essentially like a bikini athlete, but not a competitor. She was like in a cute bikini just on Pinterest. It was like this random, she didn't even have a face. It was like just her body. I was like,
Yeah.
wow, her body looks so beautiful and it looks so strong. How did she do that? Like, I want to do that. And so, yeah, I learned what bodybuilding was and how you could literally be this artist with your own body. And I thought that was really fascinating. And so I started to intentionally train to shape my body and it felt awesome. I wasn't a girl that was born with this, big bubble butt. And so being able to like actually put in work and
Mhm.
be able to see results and feel more confident with something like your glutes or your butt, right? It was very empowering. I was like, this is cool. So it started that way and it's gotten much,
Yeah.
much deeper since. But yeah, I just genuinely love it.
Yeah. Which is really, I think, what it takes to stay in anything for as long as you have, or for really as long as, I mean, you were you were in this whenever a lot of the people that initially kind of brought the fitness industry mainstream, like you played a huge role in that, which I think
Mhm.
is so crazy, and it's humbling to even have you on the podcast because you've been on some crazy podcasts like Everford Radio and some of those, and your own podcast with millions and millions of downloads. Um, what do you think about bodybuilding attracted you initially outside of just that, like competitive bodybuilding? Because you said you were
Mhm.
attracted to like this idea that you could mold your body in a certain way, and it looked like, and this girl in like a regular bikini, like it looked strong and confident and sexy. Like what what brought you into the world of competitive, like I'm gonna get tan, I'm gonna get super shredded, I'm gonna go up on this stage and get judged? Really,
I
that's what it is.
know. It's such a
What brought
weird
you to that?
concept. It's
It
such a
is.
weird
It is. It
concept.
is.
So I remember the first time that I researched it and I looked at a bikini competition. And I literally, my first reaction was, oh, I would never wear such a small bikini on stage.
Hmm.
Like, I just was like, wow, that's so small. And I was like, oh, I could
Yeah.
never do that. And I think it was this like shyness or it was just like so different that it felt really uncomfortable for me. But when I first heard about competing, it was actually just a guy in the gym. And I remember him just planting the seed. He said, you should compete. And I said, what do you mean? What is that? He was like, oh, it's you can compete in bodybuilding and it's the bikini division and you're already so shredded. Like, you don't need to lose any weight. You could probably hop on stage next week and just see what it's like. And
Yeah.
so I actually hopped on stage 2 weeks later. And
Wow.
that was the first show that I did technically, but it wasn't the first NPC show. It was like the first small local, I don't even know what it was called back then, kind of show. So in two
Hmm.
weeks, I hopped on stage. I was shredded enough. I don't remember what place I got, second, third. And then my first NPC show, I did a real prep for a 4 week prep. And that was the NPC Adela Garcia Classic. I got third and
Hmm.
I like fell in love with it. It's like as soon as I did like a real NPC show, I
Yeah.
loved it because I was like, what a concept that you can work super hard in the gym to achieve this certain look and physique. And then you get to go on stage and present it and have fun and you get to feel beautiful because like the journey is not very pretty. The journey for me is like no makeup in the gym, sweating every single day, hard blood, sweat, and tears, so to speak. And then you get
Yeah.
to like present this really beautiful physique and package. And I just thought it was a really beautiful thing. It was kind of like a beauty pageant, except completely different, obviously, but it's a
Yeah.
similar idea of you get to come and present this really beautiful package on stage that just took a lot of hard work and it felt very rewarding and it was fun. I loved being on stage. So yeah, I just fell in love with it from the first time I tried it. And right then and there, I was like, oh, I want to go pro in this.
Yeah. So that's such a fascinating part of your journey, I feel like, because you did go pro and you competed in like almost all of your Instagram, if you scroll like pretty far back, is all like, this is how I did in this show, and this is how I did in this show, and this is the next show I'm competing for, and this is the next one I'm doing. Like it was just all kind of like heavy into bodybuilding. And
Mm.
so how would you describe today, like what you do? Like if you had to describe to somebody, I love how Max Tuning does it, so I'll just do it the same way. Like if you were in an Uber and somebody asked what you do, how would you describe today what you do?
Yeah. I am a personal coach and mentor, and I help people build an authentic relationship with themselves so that they can be the authentic version of themselves. They can step fully into their power and live out their true soul's mission. And I do that through a variety of different tools. So I do it through the body and movement, honoring your vessel, knowing your vessel, having a relationship with it, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually.
Yeah, and that's you can tell you practiced that a few times because that's beautifully put. Have you always been involved in kind of like the have you always been involved in kind of like the spiritual side of
Mhm.
everything? Do you think
Yeah.
it's something that you've kind of broken into as you've gotten older, or do you think it's something that you've always had, you just have now kind of awoken it?
No, it's always been a huge part of my life ever since I was little. It just has expanded and deepened in my experience. And even way back in the day, I was still always sharing about my spiritual life. It just looked different than what my life looks like today because through my own experience, my beliefs, my perspectives, my understandings have just expanded. And I think that's the best word to use for that, which has been just really beautiful because I feel like sometimes people put themselves in a box or they put every other person into a box. And when you do that, you are really limiting your access to what's possible in this lifetime. And so I feel that I have just expanded and evolved over and over again. So yeah, it was a huge part of my life back then, and it's a huge part of my life now. It just keeps expanding.
Yeah. Yeah. And I kind of had a feeling that was going to be your answer because
Yeah.
I saw a picture of you on Instagram. I think it was like in 2017. And it was like a younger Emily standing in front of the Olympia stage talking about how you paid for a ticket so that you can come up there. You could touch the stage. You could visualize yourself up there. You could manifest it all. Like at such a young age, you were already thinking about some of these things, which I think is so cool because it's like you, like in all the conversations that you and I have had, that's what I think about is like you were extremely in touch with that spiritual side of things.
Mhm.
You manifest things, you do all of the kind
Mhm.
of like self-work that you preach. You literally practice it and you talk every time that you and I talk, I feel like we get off on some random like deep tangent on that type of stuff. So
Right.
it's like just you. It's just exactly what I think about
Mhm.
whenever I think about you, Emily. So I think it's fantastic that you've kind of developed it into all the things you're doing now, which we'll talk about. But I want to like the first place that I heard of the name Emily Hayden, I feel like,
Mhm.
because I was following like Christian and his journey early on, was you were one of the first Alphalete athletes. And we've
Yeah.
seen what Alphalete has kind of grown into now. What was that? How did that opportunity even come? Like, how did you land that?
You know what's wild? When I think about the coolest things in my life, the
Yeah.
most incredible things that I've gotten, like this question, right? What it's bringing up for me, because that truly was such an incredible experience and time in my life. When I look back at all of them and try to ask what the pattern is, the pattern in all of it is that it all came to me. Like the most monumental, coolest experiences of my life, it's like in one way, I didn't do anything to get it. And in the other way, it came to me because of who I am, what I embody, and what I've done, if that makes sense. So I'll explain it a little bit more. People
Hmm.
ask me this question all the time about Alpha Elite. I didn't know about Alpha Elite or even what it was. I didn't really necessarily, yeah, I just didn't understand at all. I actually reached out to Christian back in the day and asked if I could host a bikini posing clinic at his gym. It was like one of the
Yep.
first OG Alpha Elite gyms. And I was traveling, doing clinics all over the country, world actually. I did some in Australia too. And he was like, yeah, sure, come have it here. So I hosted the event there, and afterwards he like brings me into the room and he's like, I want to talk. And I was like, what could he want to talk to me about? And he basically just said, he was like, I've watched you with these women who have all paid to be here at your events, and the way that you lead and what you're doing, and you just embody everything that an alpha elite is, and I would love to have you on the team. And I was honestly kind of blindsided. I was like, I wasn't even considering being on any sort of like clothing company team, right? And so I kind of was like, okay, yeah, I mean, I think this is a good thing. I was like,
Yeah.
I think this sounds good, and it just kind of felt natural and it felt good. And here's the thing, while I wasn't like, I wasn't super aware of the brand, it was still, especially the women's line was super new. I knew who Christian was and I had a lot of respect for him. Obviously, what he built was amazing. And I'll say that that grew tenfold when I got to actually know him outside
Yeah.
of being online. That grew and it's only grown since then. Christian to this day is one of the most incredible visionaries that I've ever had an opportunity to work with, be friends with, travel with. And he has just continued his path of impacting people in a really big way. So, what an honor for me to get to be a part of that team and be a part of the travel team and do everything that we did there. But yeah, I think that who I chose to be and the way that I was showing up for myself, providing value online. I had a YouTube channel, I was hosting events. Essentially, I was being the authentic version of me, and that authenticity brought in that opportunity. And again, when I look at like all
Yeah.
these other experiences I've had in life, like it was like a phone call coming to me. It was things that just came to me,
Mhm.
and I think that when we look at like manifesting in our lives and wanting to like manifest great things in our lives, a lot of it has to do with, well, I would say all of it has to do with your energetic vibration and what you are giving into the world and who you are being. That's what you're going to attract. So when you're on a very high vibrational state, you're going to attract those opportunities and those things into your life, especially when you are open and surrendered to life rather than being constricted, closed, or trying to control, trying to make things happen. Like if I was like, so in my masculine energy about it, like I'm going to make this happen no matter what,
Mhm.
which I have done before. I've done that right with like Miss Bikini Olympia. I was dead set that I was going to manifest this in my life and I was going to do it by my hard work. It was like this masculine energy of making it happen. And
Yep.
life took me down a different route. And I'm so at peace with that now. I understand that that's the right path for me. But the younger version of me for sure would definitely get into these feelings of like, I can make something happen. And now I realize that the things that are really meant for you, they are literally part of your destiny. As long as you're being your authentic self, being all of who you can be, these things are going to come to you. And it's
Yep.
actually a lot of fun getting to receive it too.
Yeah. No, that's a fantastic point too. I did a Instagram caption on this kind of the other day, or on a similar topic, I guess. It was on the topic of alignment, because I do think I get caught up a lot in I mean, for God's sake, the name of this podcast is the Bamcast, by any means necessary. Like we were
Yeah.
just talking about that, right? And I
Yeah.
think I get caught up on that a lot. And I've even bought like different things as a reminder of like, hey, like a necklace or something, or like a bracelet, like, hey, this signify, like, my holding companies are named BAM, like by any means necessary. Like I'm always trying to remind myself, like, you can work hard enough, always you can force this to happen. But
Mm,
one thing that I've kind of thought a lot more about, and this is where the Instagram caption came in, is alignment recently.
mm,
And I think that we all have to consider alignment when we do think about, these types of mentalities. Because one thing that I've been kind of stepping into lately that sparked the Instagram post in the first place was, I'm kind of stepping into with AR, and with some of the company stuff, like a more of kind of a leadership, like employee management type of role, which is something that I've never really experienced like
mm,
before. And I think anytime that we have a new challenge or a new experience where there's friction that we experience. And
Mhm.
that friction, I think the phase of the friction up front is really where we can tell if it's aligned or not. Because there's going to
Mhm.
be friction no matter what. You're always going to experience friction. But how you feel in the middle of that friction is what tells me, at least, whether it is aligned or whether it's not. If it feels like the type of friction of like I'm growing through this, like you can tell when
Mhm.
it's that type of good friction, and when you should press on and pursue and get through this. But you can also tell the type of friction that's like, this doesn't feel good. Like this isn't
Mhm.
fun. This isn't like the good type of challenging. This feels like wrong to try and push through this. And I think
Mhm.
that's where the alignment kind of comes into play. Do you think that's an accurate description of kind of what you're talking about with like things coming to you?
Yeah, I think when you experience resistance, it's important to tune in and get to the root of it. What is the root of this resistance? Is it my ego that is trying to keep me safe and trying to keep me comfortable?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because sometimes it can be resistant to change. So it's important to recognize if that's what it is. And if so, that's your opportunity to let go of all the old layers of self that can't go where you're going next, to speak to the ego and let it know, I understand you're trying to keep me safe, but this is where we're going now. Right.
Hmm.
Or is this resistance, like you mentioned, a misalignment? Like, where is the resistance coming from? And man, a lot of my life is just this constant journey of tuning in and listening to my own inner intuition and knowing. I think
Yeah.
a lot of people are so focused on the external world and they don't spend enough time tuning into their internal world, right? Like hand on heart, hand on lower belly, closing your eyes, getting into your own experience within your body and even asking yourself, like, what is surfacing right now? What's coming up in this moment? And there's been so many times where I've had to coach myself through those feelings that were surfacing because initially, sometimes you're not even conscious or aware of what's surfacing. So when you take that time to tune in and to become aware of what's actually surfacing within, then you can start to make more aligned action and decisions. And it's also important to know that there's always the subconscious, unconscious parts at play as well. So once you know that, you can ask, is there some sort of subconscious belief or unconscious pattern that's showing up right now? And if so, how can I make space for that so I can see it and I can love it and accept it? And also, challenge myself to grow out of that, lovingly push
Mhm.
myself into a growth phase so that these same unconscious patterns and beliefs don't continue to hold me back. So, yeah, it's not really like a one size fits all answer. It's tuning in to find out what's true in the moment for you and then being able to support yourself best given whatever those answers are.
Yeah. Yeah. And I've talked a lot about this, or a lot about this on the podcast, where I think if people can just be even 1 or 2% more self-aware, I think that is really a key to so much more in life, whether it's your relationships, understanding how you might present yourself in your relationships, understanding why, like if you're feeling angry or like a heightened sense of just like energy that you need to just like kind of burst, is it anger? Is it jealousy? Is it rage? Like what are the things that you're actually feeling? Like if you can name
Mhm.
it, you can tame it, right?
Yeah.
And if you can understand why you're feeling certain things or what you're feeling, then you can understand why, I should say.
Mm,
And just understanding why helps you navigate situations so much more and remove the ego from it. Because
mm,
that's something that I've learned so much as I've just gotten older too, is like I used to be kind of the hot-headed, very egotistical kind of, I mean, really just typical entrepreneur or dude or guy in bodybuilding, like whatever.
right.
But if you can go to a place inside your head and understand where that's even coming from, it makes it so much easier to open yourself up for the good things that can come out of these situations or these emotions. Like if you know
So,
that you're feeling something because like you're feeling jealousy, it's not anger, it's not deceit, it's not any, you're feeling jealousy. Then it's like, okay, what about me would make me jealous about this situation? Oh, I have this insecurity because of this other event way back here that I'm for some reason bringing into this situation with this person that wasn't involved, like
mhm,
as an example. And I think
yeah.
it can help you show up so much better in your relationships and just in your interpersonal dealings if you can be self aware, just understand why am I feeling the things that I'm feeling.
Yeah, it really does go such a long way. And there's this saying, or I guess understanding or perspective that says we see the world not as it is, but as a reflection of self.
Wow.
And it's essentially that everything in this world is a mirror. So even what you just described in that example, it's like, if for someone who might be experiencing jealousy, they may want to act out in anger to their partner, right? But it's like in that moment, it's literally just a reflection of something that's unhealed. And so a
Mm-hmm.
lot of what I do is I help people return to love. And healing is the journey of returning to love. So it's like that moment that sometimes people feel self judgment or shame about. It's like you don't actually have to feel judgment or shame for yourself feeling jealous and even getting angry. You actually get to just take a curious approach and say, oh, this is here as a gift to highlight something within me that needs love. There's something within me where there's a lack of love. And maybe it was this experience that I had and this previous thing that happened. And I never took time to fully feel it, to fully process it, and to return to love in that way. And so then it becomes a journey of being able to love that part of yourself. And
Mm-hmm.
it's the most beautiful journey, in my opinion, because the more that you get to do that, you have a lot less like stress, judgment, shame for when other things surface. And as you do that, what you're doing is you're not only becoming such a beautiful space of loving energy for yourself, but you expand your capacity to hold loving space for others. Because what you realize is that what everyone does has very little to do with you and much
Mm-hmm.
more to do with them. Right. So the next time that your friend or your partner or somebody is having a big reaction, rather than being upset and taking it personally, you actually get to take a seat back and say, oh, I understand that there's something internally that's being triggered or elicited within them. And this is really about them. And then what you get to do is rather than, attacking back or taking it personally, imagine the shift that would happen if people would just drop back into their hearts and literally like hold that loving space, even for the other person to express big emotion, anger,
Yeah.
sadness, whatever, and just sit there with loving space. I love you. I get it. And let them feel that, let them process that. And then they'll come to this awareness of, if they're self aware and doing the work, they'll be able to identify like what's really going on. But I just think, this world would be a lot better if more people did the work, because then we could all be loving spaces, not just for ourselves, but also for the people around us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's extremely profound. What role do you feel like struggling, and I mean struggling in really in the context of the things that you put yourself through as a bodybuilder, because there's a significant amount of struggling that goes into prep and being
Yeah.
that dialed in and putting yourself through all those things. What role do you feel like that amount of subjecting yourself to struggle on purpose has played in your role or in your journey towards like self-development and spiritual awakening and all the things that you've kind of evolved into?
Such a good question. Yeah, I always say that bodybuilding was such a beautiful platform for my own personal development. That's really what it became, is it became this platform to work on myself. With each prep that I did, I was learning more, becoming more self-aware, overcoming really difficult things within, even externally, and it
Yeah.
brings up everything. I think one of the biggest blessings during that time was it was my excuse, so to speak, to not drink. Like I could just tell
Yeah.
people, sorry, I'm prepping, and they'd leave me alone. And so there's no alcohol. Your system is super clean. You're eating, clean foods. You're hydrating. You're taking your vitamins. You're, on your training regimen. So it's like your vessel, this human body, this earth meat suit that we get to walk around in, it becomes like very cleared of a lot of the things that I think typically distort or cloud or like foggy up. That was funny. Or like
I
fog
like
up,
it. I like it.
right? Like it's people are
Yeah.
lacking clarity, and often it's not that they actually lack clarity, it's that there's so much shit in the way that's
Yeah.
blocking their connection to their intuition, to truth, to the divine, and they can't even see it. And a lot of it's like the lifestyle choices. So I feel that bodybuilding gave me this wonderful platform to just be in such a clear space. The clarity that I would experience, I would even say like I feel like a superhuman on prep. And a lot of it was just the lifestyle choices that I was making that I continue to live out now in the day that I have now. But yeah, absolutely. Having to build such a strong muscle of discipline has served
Hmm.
me in so many ways in life. And I do believe that the bodybuilding journey is very heavily in the masculine energy, which is such a beautiful energy that both men and women have within them. We all have both masculine and feminine. And so it was really beautiful to get to sharpen that and have that be so incredibly strong. And I feel that after bodybuilding, going into my healing journey, I was really able to tap into the feminine energy. And then after coming out of that and being where I'm at now, it's like this beautiful harmony of the masculine and the feminine, and getting to watch them exist together and exist in harmony, so that I have the structure, I have the discipline, but yet I'm allowing my intuition, my inner guidance, my connection to the divine to help guide me in my steps. So both are so necessary. And yeah, it was just such a pivotal time in my life. And it was almost a decade of my life, really committed to that. So it wasn't a short amount of time, it was a lot. And it definitely just helped me get to where I'm at today for sure.
Yeah, yeah. I expected that to kind of be the case, because I mean, we've talked to several other people that have been involved in bodybuilding or heavy into competing on the podcast, and it's been kind of a similar theme. Is they had stuff that either they were going into bodybuilding to escape, like other struggles that they were trying to put themselves in a struggle to escape, or the struggle of just going through putting yourself in that mentality, digging so deep just to get on stage and to get, 1% leaner or lose that extra percentage of body fat. Like it just puts you, um, you know, I don't know if you're familiar with like the book Man's Search for Meaning. It talks about how prisoners in like concentration camps and stuff, like those people are the only people that truly know like the joys of life. And it's like completely
Mm,
backwards from what you would think, but it's like they've suffered to a point where they can actually appreciate getting to live another day, like get the bare minimums that really we all take for granted every single day. And I think subjecting yourself to struggle, like bodybuilding, like fasting, like, I mean, I've got a
Pole
buddy that's about to run
punching.
an cold plunging. Yeah. Like I've got a buddy that's about to run an ultra marathon in 3 weeks. Like that type of stuff. Yeah. Yeah. That type of stuff just makes you go into a place that you have to search the inner depths of yourself to be able to understand how you react to these things, to be able to understand how to persist through those types of things. So I figured that'd be your answer, but that you explained it, I think, very beautifully.
Thank you.
Talk about the transition from bodybuilding, and you kind of hit on that phase, but once you kind of decided, and I don't know if you fully decided, like if we'll ever see Emily Hayden hop on stage again, but talk about what that phase looked like for you and kind of what it brought about, I guess.
Yeah, the transition from bodybuilding into just the lifestyle that I live now.
Yeah.
Actually, whenever I stepped off stage in 2019 for the last time at, I think it was my 21st show, so 21,
Mm-hmm. Jeez.
I fully planned on doing a season the very next season. I fully planned on taking a small off season and coming back. But what happened was my actual physical health took a hit, and I started to have very strong
Mm-hmm.
hormonal responses to being, dieting for 21 shows and years, and the cardio and lack of sleep and traveling all the time and all the life changes you can go through. Like when you go to the doctor, they'll ask you, have you had a big breakup recently? Have you traveled, out of the state? Any of these singular things can affect your
Mm-hmm.
hormones. And yet I had done all of them, and I had done it for years and years. So
Yeah.
my body was just done, and it forced me to take time off. And I still was thinking that I would come back. But in having to take time off, I really took time to focus on internal, spiritual, mental, emotional, and physical health all together. And that journey led me down such a deep inner healing journey where I did a lot of deep inner work in order to heal from past trauma and hurt and things that I had just gone through that I never sat still enough to actually feel fully and process. And coming out of that, it really gave me this soul freedom. And that's what I call it. And that's really what the healing journey does. You return to love, and then you get to walk out your soul's freedom. And in doing
Mhm.
that, I have just reached a place where I feel the best that I've ever felt mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually. I have such inner wealth that I'm not necessarily seeking it from external things, whether that be actually, finances and wealth in that term, or accomplishments, accolades, external things. Those things are all wonderful and I welcome them in my life. I'm fully aware of part of my life path. At least I feel like I have a good awareness of where I'm
Yeah.
headed and the things that I'll accomplish. But it's like I don't need those things anymore because I already have everything that you could have internally. So yeah, the journey just led me on such a really beautiful journey of understanding what true happiness, fulfillment, and wealth really is. And I felt like I reached the peak of that when externally, to like the outside looking in, I had quote unquote nothing like externally, meaning I had all the success, I burnt it all down to the
Yeah.
ground, and then I'm like coming back, building my life back. And I don't have, the home or the, any of the things. Like I don't have any of the external things. And yet I was bubbling up with so much inner joy and so much happiness and so much inner wealth. And it was in that
Mm-hmm.
moment that the divine really spoke through me and shared with me that this is wealth. This is true wealth and abundance and fulfillment. And in knowing that, I got to, from that place, start to really rebuild my life in such a beautiful way. So competing's not on my agenda currently. Going back to your question, it's not on my agenda. I don't think that it's a part of my future. Specifically because being a woman and things that our body goes through when we compete at the level that I was, like my only goal for going back would be to go to the Olympia. And at that level, I'm simply not willing to do what would be necessary because I'm just at a different point in my relationship with my body. And I do also desire to have a family one day. And yeah, it doesn't
Yeah.
necessarily align with my life goals or my values currently. If that changes, we'll see. I'm always
Mm-hmm.
open to changing my mind. I'm always open to being shown different. But with where I'm at right now, I've just reached such a level of happiness and joy and fulfillment that I'm going to keep doing this as long as this feels good. And when and if that changes, I'll do that too.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think that's beautiful that you've kind of gone through all those things, and I always warn everybody about my quotes because some people I feel like find it annoying. Some people enjoy it. So I've been
I love
excited
it.
to go back and forth with you on quotes.
Yeah.
But have you ever heard of this is something that I heard from Alex Ramosi. Have you ever heard of the parable of the many-sided die?
No.
Okay. So I think you'll think this is really cool. I'm going to try to explain it as well as he does. So the parable of the many-sided die, basically it's two friends. All right. They both have like a die. One of them has a die with 20 sides on it. The other has a die
Mhm.
with 200 sides on it. Okay. The catch is that all the sides on both of these die, and it's like dice, right? But the multiple of it. The catch is that all the sides are red except for one green side on both dice. Okay, so one of them has 19 red sides and one green. The other one has 199 reds and one green. Following along so far?
I think so. There's two dice.
Yes.
Okay, two dice,
Yep.
199 and to one, 19 to one.
Yes, yes. So basically, every time they roll a green, they get a green side added to their die.
Okay.
They both start rolling, and the one with just 20 sides rolls a green relatively quickly. And so then he adds another green, and then pretty soon, as they're both rolling, the one with 199 red sides starting out, it's taking him forever to get his first green, and then his second green, and then his third green. Whereas this guy with 20 chances, he gets it up to where it's pretty much all green, and he's rolling greens every single time. Okay, and it's basically what it's supposed to signify is the really your attempts in life at anything. Like the more
Mm,
times that you try, the better chance that you have at succeeding the next time that you try. And so it illustrates, I think, pretty beautifully the dichotomy of, one person might be starting from a die that has 20 sides on it, and for them, success seems to come very, very easily, right? And it
mm,
seems that the odds are all stacked in their favor. And if we're the guy that in this scenario has the 200 sides, success may elude us for a while, right? It
mm,
may be a little bit tougher, but every time that we roll, we're still increasing the chances of getting that next green, right? Getting that next success. And as we build up just a stack of successes, you always have a higher chance of succeeding the next time. So I bring this up because you talk about, rebuilding yourself and doing 21 shows and the different phases of your businesses that you've been through and your podcast. And, you've done hundreds of episodes of your podcast. Like, you've been somebody that has been rolling yours constantly, right? For over a decade now in the fitness industry. I want to get your take on the parable, and then I want to talk about how you have seen the industry change as a whole in your time in the industry.
So I love that parable. I've never heard it before. And it just brings back the perspective that I feel like we've probably all heard a million times, is that the people who succeed are literally the people that don't quit.
Mm-hmm.
It's actually that simple, but it's not easy to walk out. So I think that's what it is that it's the most simple thing in the world. And it's also the hardest thing to walk out. I'll tell you, sitting here right now, especially because people have a certain idea or perspective of me in their heads, especially if they look
Yeah.
at any of the things that I've accomplished or succeeded in. And I will tell you that I cannot count how many times I've wanted to quit and how many times I've even like really justified to myself. Like, maybe I gave this thing a shot. And I'm saying this thing a shot as in like 11 plus years in the industry. Right. And so I've like really considered quitting, essentially, like taking a different route. Maybe I'd be more successful with something else. And yet
Mm-hmm.
I'm really thankful that I've had people in my life who can reflect things to me, who can reflect even my greatness or my gifts, or you know just the things that are hard to see when you're really struggling. And so I wanted to mention that, because it's not like I am here today because I didn't quit because I'm great and mighty by myself. No, I think one of the best things that you could ever do is have some good people in your corner. And you don't need many. You just really need one good friend that will tell you some truth, that will remind you of who you are
Yeah.
if you forget. And I think a lot of that is what has helped carry me through. Of course, I'm the one that has to show up. I'm the one that has to do the work. I'm the one that does have to figure it out and go again, dust off the dirt, get bruised and bleed and get up and go again. But having those people around me to remind me and to also just say, hey, me too. It helps you not
Mm-hmm.
feel alone, right? Like, we all have this idea. I really believe this. We all think that everyone is so much more successful than they are. And when you get to
Yes.
see the like behind the scenes, it's like, yeah, they're successful, but they also have struggles and they have challenges and they have hardships and they have things happening behind the scenes that you don't know about. And so I feel like it's important to
Mm-hmm.
talk about that, because it just brings some realness to this world that sometimes lacks that transparency. And I don't always think that it's like an intentional or bad thing, but it's like, you're not going to Instagram to like share, hey, I just had this huge hardship in my business. Maybe that's not
Yeah.
the style of your content. Maybe your content is different, right? And then how I've seen the industry change. Yeah, I iterations of the fitness industry. And what's been really important to me, like since day one, was just to be authentic and to stay in integrity, even if that means playing the long game, meaning there's a lot of ways in this industry, especially in the social media day and age, where you could just sell out for the money, essentially. You could do what you needed to do to get ahead. But it
Yeah.
never sat well with me to do that, even if it meant that I was like missing out, so to speak, on monetary gains or status or whatever was appealing at the time, right? Like, it was just always important to me to stay in integrity. And so what I've seen in the industry are waves of people coming in and out. And the people that really aren't in their integrity and truth, they tend to cycle out pretty quickly. And then the
Mm-hmm.
people that really are being their authentic selves and they really are aligned with their actions, the businesses, what they're serving and giving in the world, they're the ones that are consistent throughout the years, that you can look back 10 years ago and see them sharing a similar message that has evolved since then. And so, yeah, I've just watched the cycles and seasons of things coming in and out. And, there's always like drama and big things happening. And more than anything, it's like I've always been the person to do my best to stay out of any of that and just kind of like stay on my path, head down, focused, helping one person at a time. And over time, it's really added up. So that's kind of how I've stayed grounded in the midst of such a changing atmosphere around me.
Yeah. I got my second quote for you. You don't become a master because you're able to retain knowledge. You become a master when you're able to release it. What does that make you think of?
Ooh, love that. Yeah, I think it just speaks to you know that you really know something when you can teach and show others the way, right? So it's not about
Yeah.
just knowing it for yourself, but it's the embodiment, like you are it. And then when you're able
Mhm.
to equip someone else and empower them to do it for themselves, that's when you know that you've really become a master at something.
Yeah. It made me think of that because you were talking about how the people that have consistent messages that are showing up consistently and that are really just being their authentic selves, they're doing this and they're providing value because they've created so much knowledge and intrinsic value in education that it just overflows and they give it to other people, right? And
Yeah.
you think of
Oh,
like
yeah.
the Alex Ramosis or the U's, like the people that are always just looking for ways to share the things that they've acquired,
Hmm.
that's really who ends up winning, is
Hmm.
because they don't have like you don't have an ulterior motive that you're trying to push on people by helping people to, showing them ways to kind of unlock inner competence really, and just understanding the inner things that are going on inside of them. You're just trying to do that, and that's also very, very candidly a journey that you are undertaking and doing alongside of everybody. So
Hmm.
I think it comes across as very genuine. And I think it also helps you to become such a master of a lot of these things that you're teaching people, because it's something that you're realistically learning and then also just
Hmm.
showing people as you learn it. And I think that's ultimately, like you said, it's the best way to be able to really become masterful at something is by sharing whenever you learn it, releasing that knowledge.
Yeah, so good. And I think one of the things that you'll notice about people that are really great at what they do is they all retain the ability to be a student. And not just the ability, but I would say the positioning. Like I'm always a student of life first. And, I wouldn't necessarily say like master. It's like a balance, right?
Yeah.
I know that I have gifts that I can share that can really help and empower people, so maybe that would be considered like the mastery of what I do. And I think that's beautiful. And I'm
Mhm.
always first and foremost a student in everything that I do. And I have this natural curiosity that I've had ever since I was
Mhm.
little. And I literally love learning and I love learning the next thing. And I'm curious for it and I have questions. So I think that that helps me to uh, be empowered in my gifts, even because I'm always still thinking like the curious student.
Yeah. What are the ways that you think a lot of our internal thoughts? I know we've talked about this kind of on private calls before. What are the ways that you think our internal thoughts and feelings end up presenting themselves physiologically, and what are some examples of things that you've seen within yourself or maybe people you've worked with where that's kind of been the case?
Anything unexpressed stays within the body, and something that stays stuck within the body manifests in some way. It's the body's incredible intelligence to let us know that something needs to be looked at. But the way that this incredible intelligence presents often is in disease or sickness or anxiety or stress, which really we shouldn't have judgment on. We should actually just see it as our body's notification system. Hey, pause. There are things that need to be looked at, that need to be addressed, right? Maybe it's your physical health and the way that you're showing up for yourself and your lifestyle choices. Maybe it's emotional healing and trauma from the past that you've never looked at. But to your initial question, the way that I've seen that manifest is these subconscious limiting beliefs, whether it's I am not worthy. I think that's a huge one that a lot of people deal with, that I've dealt with in my life as well. And continuously, I'm always seeking to provide more love into, this little childhood version of me that one day formed that belief. And I think that
Yeah.
that's a big one everyone deals with. So if you recognize I am not worthy, and even though consciously, and here's what I find is that a lot of people on their healing path, there's um, a very big contrast happening within. And it's like consciously Maybe you're at the point where you've decided, I am worthy and I know that I'm worthy. Yet there's this inner belief unconsciously happening at the subconscious level that says, I am not worthy. And the thing is, you've practiced this one, the I'm not worthy, your entire life. So for you to think
Mm-hmm.
that just because consciously you understand and decide now, oh, I actually am worthy, that it'll just shift, that's not going to make it shift. We actually have to go to the place where you decided that you were not worthy and provide love and healing and space and acceptance to that part of ourselves. And once we do that, then we can alchemize this limiting belief of I am not worthy. And when we do that, it's actually shown through our behavior. So, like physically, we manifest whatever it is that we are believing, which are these like subconscious beliefs that drive everything that we do. So, by choosing to do the inner work and inner healing naturally, you'll start to choose different things in your life. A woman who doesn't feel worthy, her actions are going to look very different than a woman that knows that she is the most worthy, that who and what she is the most valuable. And so I think that that's just a really great perspective to have so that we can learn next time our body is giving us a notification like stress or anxiety or overwhelm, even burnout, breakdown. Oh, my body needs me to take some moments to be still and pause and to become aware of what's going on. There must be an unconscious pattern, belief, or something that's running right now that's running me into a place that doesn't feel good for my body. My body's not happy. It's not thriving. It's not, feeling its best here. So let me take a few steps back and really look at my life and analyze and what's going on here. Is there something I need to feel, address, see, communicate about? Right. So navigating the internal landscape is one of my favorite things. I'm quite a nerd about it, actually.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's like so fascinating. The more that I learn, the more that I realize that we are the most incredible beings. Like human beings are so incredibly designed. And when you start to learn yourself and learn your body and understand how it's always showing up for you, it's always healing itself. Like I sliced my hand open the other day and I hadn't injured myself in a long time. And the blood starts going, and I'm just like fascinated. I'm like, whoa. And the blood's like, I mean, is a lot. I've actually photos of it because I sat there with my phone, like, whoa.
Yeah.
And then
I
eventually
know
I
you
was
were
like,
telling me
oh,
about this.
yeah, I was like, I should stop this. I should put my phone down, stop
Yeah.
this. So I stop it, but I was literally watching the body do what it's designed to do. Our body is literally designed to heal. And so while the blood was running,
Mm-hmm.
it thickens up very quickly and then it's like thick. And I'm sure this is gross to some people, but I was just so fascinated, like having this tangible experience of what the body is always doing. So even when we feel like,
Mm-hmm.
because I feel like there can be this idea or limiting belief, like, my body hates me or my body's working against me, for people that have like digestion issues or physical ailments or whatever it might be. There's a disconnect. We don't understand. We're not seeing our bodies properly. These vessels are incredible and they're always on our side, but the number one thing that we have to do is get our mind on our own side. We have to fix our own
Yeah.
perspective and the way that we view ourselves and view our bodies, because if we did that right, then our thoughts would change, our words to our bodies would change. Like one of the things that I'm doing is I will like wake up, put a hand on my heart, one on my lower belly, and I literally speak love over every cell in my body. I will speak love to it.
Mm-hmm.
I got to share this with you real quickly. There was
Yeah.
this story where there was this like research group, right? And there was three different plants, and they put the plants in different rooms, and they had three different groups of people. One group of people said nothing to the plant. The next group of people, what did they say? The next group of people, I think that they spoke certain words to the plant, right? And then the last group of
Yeah.
people like prayed over this plant and spoke love into this plant. So it was like first one
Mm-hmm.
nothing, second one was like a controlled something, but it wasn't like this loving gratitude energy. And the third one
Yeah.
was like pure love, pure presence, pure gratitude. And the first plant like didn't grow much at all. The second plant grew twice as much, having like some connection. And the third plant grew like exponentially. And there's so many examples like this of different research that's been done, even with like the frequency of music with a
Yeah.
plant. If you put like, this low vibrational music, how it literally starts to die. And then if you put high vibrational music, which all of sound is a certain frequency and it's measurable, this is like science, it's not woo woo. And so if you play higher
Yeah.
frequency music to it, it actually grows exponentially. Our cells in our body are the same thing. We can literally speak life and speak healing to our bodies. And if anyone's interested, look into Joe Dispenza, Dr. Joe Dispenza. He talks
Yeah.
about healing himself from a severe back injury. And when I injured myself, I injured my back and neck in jiu-jitsu in 2021. 2022 maybe. I used his book and his knowledge and his experience and just tested it out. I used myself as a test subject. Like, could I actually heal myself through, of course, the practicality of going to physical therapy and doing my exercises and being healthy, but then with the intentional meditation and the words of love of speaking that over my body. And I healed so quickly from that injury. It was insane. So now it's like a normal, natural
Mhm.
practice of me to of my mind to wake up and just speak life, speak love, speak healing over my body. Even when I'm sick, I say, body, thank you. Thank you that, I'm purging right now. Thank you that you're
Mhm.
getting the things out of my body that don't belong. Thank you that I have a fever and that you're actually trying to get this sickness and bacteria out of me. Thank you. And it
Yeah.
just that has really shaped and changed my relationship to myself and to my own body. And I think it's yeah, just a big perspective shift that we can make.
Yeah. I think you and I have talked about Dr. Dispenza's work before, and another book recommendation that I would have is called The Expectation Effect, which is kind of like the book I was nerding out with you last time we talked about, which is it's got like you were talking about the plant study or the plant studies that you kind of mentioned. It's got study after study, case after case of
Mhm,
these types of things happening and being done inside of humans. And I know
mhm,
like Joe Dispenza, he's got a bunch of people that are like tracking his events and stuff now because they're extremely intense. And like he's had people walk in or get roll in with like muscular dystrophy and then walk out after like these intense kind of experiences like what you're referring to. And what's now starting to be like tracked and almost like proven from what people are seeing in like the expectation effects book, which has I believe it's like hundreds, if not thousands, of um, sources inside of it. And Joe Dispenza's work, and even not Grant Cardone, Tony Robbins, like his events. There's people are tracking like the experience that's happening at his, and like the apex of like how people feel afterwards, and then how long it takes for them to trail back off if they were depressed
mhm,
before. Um, it's now thought that like the human brain, you always hear people talk about we have 10% usage of our brains, that it's now thought that the brains kind of can act as like a pharmacy for our bodies. And so doing things and practicing things like what you're talking about can activate that pharmacy to kind of kick in and help out with supercharging healing or helping us to do certain things in like you hear about the moms that like lift up a car to save their kid and stuff like
mhm,
that. Like certain things like that can be happened from just like the brain's internal pharmacy being like, hey, Baker or Emily needs this right now, and they're
mhm,
asking for it, like actually asking for it, not just depending on something external to come in and help, or not just waiting it out and resting and thinking like eventually it'll pass. Like they're actually using us to do it, right? Our brains. But that is something that I've gotten super, super far into, and I haven't talked a lot on the podcast. And I was
oh,
hoping that this conversation
fun.
would go there because
Yeah.
it's so interesting, and it's also so
Mhm.
empowering to think that we're as human beings we're capable of that.
I'm glad you brought this up because I love talking about it too. And one thing that I love about Dr. Joe Dispenza is that when he first started talking about these different energy centers that are within your body, they're also referred to as chakras. But I feel like before people wouldn't take that seriously because of the term. They thought that it was a woo woo term. And so, what I love about Dr. Joe Dispenza is he actually brings science into these spaces that previously people just had different perceptions on. So you're right, he is paying so much money and putting so much investment into the actual data and research and measurable results for these different things and even these practices like meditation. And for someone like me who's very logical, analytical, like I got the highest score in college on my logic in my logic class because that's just how my brain works. But what's interesting is I even shared earlier how I've always been very spiritual as well. So I've always had both. Like very open to spirituality, very open to just things that are not necessarily tangible, and yet the most logical, analytical mind that you'd ever meet. So it's been cool because I just understand people that are very skeptical when it comes to certain things, like learning about all of these things, energy, frequency. These things can sometimes seem unknown, or they seem, if they
Yeah.
don't have knowledge behind it, they might not understand it. But I really recommend people to look into the science and the research behind it, because you become so much more empowered when you realize the path to healing, to optimization, to performing your best, and even looking at the possibility of what we're really capable of. When I think about what we are actually capable of, I just have like the most expanded, open, curious mind towards it, because I truly feel that we have not even touched close to the surface of what we are capable of. And I love like this generation that we're in now. I think it's one of the most exciting times ever, because of people who are doing these incredible events and actually getting data on it so that we can understand it deeper. And the deeper that we understand, the more we can empower ourselves. So, I used to go into like a sound healing, for example, and just didn't really know that it was doing anything, but I just thought, okay, like I feel a little more peaceful. Like that's nice. I'm not sure if it's really doing anything. And then when I actually started looking at the research of sound healing and what's happening to our bodies and our cells, and on an energetic level as well, when we're around those types of frequencies, then I would get to my mat and I'd lay down for my sound healing, and I would just, it's like my heart was so much more open, and I would just let it soak in my cells. And we know how powerful the mind is. So getting your mind on board
Yeah.
is so, so beneficial. So if you're someone that is very logical and analytical, go learn the education, the research, the science, so that your mind
Yes.
will be fully on board. And then when you're in those spaces, you'll have such an expanded experience, because now the mind, body, soul are all in alignment.
Yeah, and I think that's why I enjoyed the expectation effect so much. I can't remember the guy's name. I wish I could. I think it's like David Robeson or something. Um, but he has like every single page has multiple studies quoted, and then the end is like an index of every single study quoted and where to find it and how to find the data. So for me, being super logical minded as well, it helped me to not for it to not be so like woo woo sounding. I could literally go look at each study and be like, holy, like this is really what was found, and this is really what happened.
That's so
So
cool.
doing your own research is definitely, if you're doubtful about any of it, just look it up. Just kind of search the web and see what you think. And if nothing else, it's similar to any type of like religious experience, like just the act of doing it. Even if you're skeptical about anything else being out there or anything else happening, the act of doing it is going to be net positive anyways, because it helps out with your mindset and where you're at, with your mental state of being.
So good.
So, I know you have a hard stop in a few minutes. I wanted to go ahead and what do you want to talk about that you have going on right now? I know you've got the podcast, you're doing some really cool retreats. What do you want to talk about with what you have going on currently?
Yeah, I have my Instagram at Emily Hayden,
Mhm.
Hayden. So everyone can check me out there. I'll always post updates there. But yeah, I have my podcast. I have a few retreats that aren't quite announced yet, but events and retreats that I'm hosting. So just come find me on Instagram, and I'll make sure to update you all on there. And hopefully we can connect either through there, an event, or speaking thing. I love meeting people in person. So I hope that if someone, is listening and has been a part of my audience for a while, that if they have the opportunity to come or meet me or go to an event, I would absolutely just love to get to meet you. So please don't hesitate on that.
Perfect. Perfect. And then last question, Emily, I told you about it. We ask every single guest on the Bamcast this. What are you, Emily Hayden, going to accomplish by any means necessary?
Fully embodying my authentic highest self. I have a
I love
vision
it.
for her, and no matter what, I will and am currently embodying her. And that's what's most important to me, because in that, I'm living out my soul's mission, and I'm bringing the gifts that I was meant to bring into this world, and I'm serving in a way that I was meant to do, and I'm in my abundance and my wealth and the frequency of all the things I've ever wanted. So that's why that's the most important thing to me. Everything else will come after that.
I love it. Well, Emily, I know you're extremely busy, so thank you so much for your time today. I can't wait to have you on again and just kind of even nerd out some more on some of this stuff, because it really is, it's become a big passion of mine, and you've been a big part of that, opening me
Oh,
up to a lot of these
cool.
things. So can't thank you enough for the things that you do and the work that you do,
Mm,
and just everything that you put out there in the world. So I
thank
appreciate your time,
you.
and hope to have you on again soon.
Yeah, thank you so much. And thank you for all the effort that went into this as a podcaster. I know, and it was very clear that
Mhm.
you had done your research. So thank you for that. I feel very like
Of
honored
course.
to be on your show and have this conversation. And yeah, even if you just want to like pull up some research and us chat and explore and be curious about it together, I'm so down for that too. So let me know. I'd love to be back on.
Amazing. Sounds great. I'm gonna take you up on it. All right, Emily. Talk to you soon.
Bye. Have a good one.
Thank you so much for listening to this entire episode of the BAMcast. It was a very different pace from what we typically do on the show. So I hope that you guys enjoyed kind of the different topics that Emily and I hopped into. And I meant what I said on the show. I think it's an extremely interesting field, and kind of just what the brain and mind and body is really capable of doing whenever you are asking these things of it. So I hope you guys enjoyed it as much as I did. I really do want to kind of incorporate some more of that stuff on the show by bringing in guests that are thinking along those same lines as what Emily and I talked about today. So if you enjoyed this episode, make sure that you like and comment, or leave a review if you're listening on any type of audio platform. If you don't want to miss the guests that we have coming up, which there are some awesome ones slated to come up soon, then I highly, highly suggest following the show on any type of audio platform, or subscribing if you're listening to this or watching it on YouTube. Sharing the show if you got anything out of it is always appreciated. You guys know I don't do any type of ads on the show, so that's the only way that it's going to grow. It means the world if you do any type of, really any of those things: subscribing, sharing the show, following, leaving a comment. Any type of feedback is much appreciated. I appreciate you guys, and I'll see you guys on next week's episode.